Before we call upon Rabbi Elbaz to speak, we welcome our Chabra from the Messias, Rabbi Rav Yeshua Hecht, for joining us this evening. Thank you, Rabbi. He also gets a mazel tov. I think in a couple of weeks he makes a bar mitzvah for an mazel tov. To be brief, there's an important concept which I noticed, and I was speaking to other Rabbi Hecht before, that before Tisha B'Av, we always lay Devarim, start the fifth book of the Torah, Devarim. And around Rosh Chodesh, we always read Matkos Maseh, it's Maseh, when it's not a double parsha. And the obvious question is, as the Rebbe teaches, the Yidden is labeled with the gang from the Vach, and the gang from the Vach might be separate from the Vach. So the Jew has to live with the movement, the quarters of the week, and the quarters of the week is the weekly Torah reading. And it wasn't haphazard that Matkos Maseh is traditionally always read on the Luach, Luvaya Rosh Chodesh Av. And the question is, what is the correlation? What is the reason for it? We saw a nice var to Maseh, especially Maseh, and Moshe Rabbeinu, when he mobilizes the Eden, and he has Pinchas going out to the Yeshua, Shalom Muhammad, and they take war on Midian to take care of business. And Moshe Rabbeinu did not hesitate in doing his job. He knew that upon the completion of this last task, the Eibishter would take his Heilig and Neshama, he would go back to his Father in heaven and depart from this world. And yet Moshe Rabbeinu did not hesitate. And shortly thereafter, Moshe begins the Chumash Devarim, his famous farewell address, as he bids Klal Yisrael farewell to Mashiach will come. In Maseh, when Moshe Rabbeinu discusses the laws of Eretz Yisrael, he discusses the laws of the Ori Miklot, of the unintentional killer. And he established 3 cities in Yarden, which is the territory of Reuben, Gad, Chassid, and Menashe, and the other 3 he established in Eretz Yisrael proper, the heartland of Israel, we call it Judah Shamron, which we can't give away, ancient land, which is also very serious, is going on in the condition right now. And later on, they added on another 42, making 48 cities. A side note, the original 6 cities that Moshe Rabbeinu designated were very unique. If the unintentional Rotzeach, the murderer, entered those cities, and he did not know he was in refuge, he was protected. The other 42 cities, the unintentional murderer has to know, he bedafta went intentionally to a sanctuary city to be saved. The second major distinction in the first 6 cities, he lived rent-free. He was a guest of the Levian. The other 42 cities, he had to pay rent. So he got the rent-free, and he did not need to know he was there to have his protection. But the obvious question, people complain. They don't want a drug rehab center in the neighborhood. And we read in the paper how people want to build homeless shelters. People complain about homeless shelters. What are we doing? We're taking the most prime real estate, the neighborhood where the Levian live, where all the chashuv of the Levian, where the Rabbanim, the Poskim, the Midei Chachamim, and we're bringing into them these unintentional murderers, people who would not necessarily be warned by a seudah. Linas had said that in Yerushalayim, and the Rabbanim were very particular who they had dinner with. And trust me, I don't believe these Russians who killed unintentional will be on the guest list for such a dinner affair. And yet, by the Levium, we stick them with these unintentional killers. And the question is, why? So I saw Pi Chasidus that the Rebbe makes his argument as every Yid is a diamond. Every Yid is a beautiful gem. So what does the smart seicher do? The smart seicher sees a diamond is dusty, and and fish this off, and the diamond shines. The foolish seicher says, leaves it on the floor. The Levium were such great people that they were batel their das to the Eibush of the Torah and Mitzvahs to the extent they were soivel. They accepted every member of the club. They were able to ice their emotions, that how they felt about this individual, of mekanratif in the Yiddish and the Shalom. And the only way to save this Yid who never killed unintentional was being in the influence of these great Leviim, these great Tzaddikim, these great Talmidei Chachamim. But the Leviim felt that they are lucky for one reason, because they had the correct education. They had the correct opportunity. They had the love in their life. If only this poor Rotzeh who came from the hoods, people paid more attention to him, there was more outreach to him, and people showed him there is a way, this would never have happened. On one hand, the Levi was a Kanai. Pinchas was a Levi. He had to do what he had to do. But the same Kanai as the Pinchas had, they understood the job of intervention as prevention and showing love to Makarav people. And where did Levium get it? Moshe Rabbeinu is the best example. When Moshe Rabbeinu accepted the Erev Rav, there was a little debate with the Eibishter. Moshe Rabbeinu, sure you want to take this Erev Rav into there as a member of Klal Yisrael? So Moshe Rabbeinu said, who am I to say no? I feel it's to a Nishtayid who want to become closer to the Eibishter. I but the opportunists. If they will become closer to Shechina, come closer to the Eibishter, who am I to block them? So the criticism of Moshe was his love, even for the Nishkiyids, created the whole problem with the Erev Rav. But truth be spoken, we read this concept of Ori Miklat. And it was very important that Moshe Rabbeinu had this concept before he bade farewell to Am Yisrael, to teach us the importance of being soivel every Yid, outreaching to every Yid with love. In a quote, once again, I heard a nice word from Moshe Meir Weishlita. He asked the Shaila Rav Mandel, that how do you define Pinchas as a Kanai? Pinchas as a Kanai was somebody who, once he became a Kanai, was looking for a spear. He had a spear on him. Haiti a Kanai would walk around with the spear looking for a mission. But this is not what the Torah wants. What the Torah wants is somebody to understand you've been blessed with brachas, with yeshiva education, you've been blessed with big families. Not just this Yid over here, we're responsible as Levium that we do not do proper outreach to prevent this from happening in the first place. I say this tonight, and I'm sure I've had to speak after Rabbi Elbaz to address the same serious issue. The Igud HaRabbonim has to once again reaffirm our 80 Kanai Mahar, 1942, 80 Kanai Mahar. The position that the Rabbanut is the full authority of Halacha in Eretz Yisrael. We need someone to have that. We're also going to reaffirm tonight that the manner of prayer at the Kaisel has to be Kedas Kedin. The other day somebody asked me, how do you know the Kaisel is always separate seating? So I said the Gemara in Sukkah, and hey, Simchas Beis HaShe'evim. But they asked me, that's when services began. Are you sure before then they had separate seating? I said, absolutely yes. When Rivka and Yitzchak went to daven, they each davened in a separate corner by Hara Maria. So Medafresh better than this. So Rivka and Yitzchak davened separate in two separate corners by the Heilige Hara Maria before there was a public worship going on. And when Avram brought Yitzchak to the Akedah, the woman didn't go with him into the altar. There's certain rules of decorum and respect. We have the Igud HaRabbonim want every Yid, like Shevet Levi, to have the opportunity, to have the education, to have the knowledge. Most American Jews, as your father, Rav would say, there was spiritual holocaust in this country. That was the language he used, spiritual holocaust. And the spiritual holocaust comes, you're not going to have in America the Moloch site, let's say, Nish Feine Talmud Chacham from a Liftish Yeshiva. Because in America, if somebody has acumen in themselves, they wind up at Harvard, Yale, college, they get degrees. You're not going to find the guy Nebuch Reichenach, Paparazzi of Shabbos who knows what Bakamor is in writing. That can happen in America. In America, if somebody like that, they wind up in the colleges. But the real reality is we're dealing with the majority of American Jews, world Jews, who really need an education. And as Rabbanim and the Igud, we need to bring the Shevet Levi out in us to educate them. It's our responsibility. We're not here to make machlokes. We're here like a Pinchas looking for a course to solve. We want to do it with love, but one thing has to be reiterated again, that the Kaisel, the Rabbanut has to remain intact. Either the Rabbi have to follow up with the strong statement, the official statement of the organization. On this note, with the greatest honor of our Genigin, I call upon our Goin, our Chacham, the Chacham of Ocean Parkway, our Goin Harav, my Rebbe, Hananya Elbaz.